anything about politics. My name is Jarrett Berenstein, and I am here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left wing or right wing. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the show where you can ask all of your questions about politics, and nobody's going to judge you, nobody's going to roast you, no one's going to make you feel bad for not knowing things. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. So, any questions about politics at all? Simple, complicated, left wing, right wing, just throw them in the chat and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Democrat, a Republican, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. This is not a debate show. This is not a show for yelling or insulting each other. I know there's a lot of really popular shows out there where Democrats and Republicans yell at each other and call each other names and try to win their arguments and prove that they're smarter than the other person. This is not that show, so if that's what you're looking for, I'd say go somewhere else. This is just engaging in good faith on the substance. No fights, no roasting, no debating, no harassment, no bullying. Austin St. James, what a cool name, says, I have a question. Well, go ahead and throw it in the chat then. What's up? Eliminate all foids. That is not how you spell my name, buddy. JP, good to see you again. Oh, I'm sorry that you're having a bad day, JP. Aran says, where are you on the political compass? I'm a progressive Democrat, Aran. To everybody else, welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared. I'm here to answer your questions about politics. What's up, Licita? So you can put your questions in the chat. Simple, complicated, whatever. Left wing, right wing. Everybody's welcome here. There's a lot of misinformation and propaganda bounced around out there. And so this is the show where you can ask your questions about what's really going on. And maybe we can all have a shared reality once again. Austin St. James says, why do Christians support Israel while hating Muslims despite having more in common with them? So there is, unfortunately, a large demographic of American Christians who have been sold a massive pack of lies about what it means to be a good Christian. They typically live in the same kinds of neighborhoods and the same kinds of information bubbles. Some Christians are don't like Muslims because they are less, I don't know, less like them, more different than them. Their skin color is browner typically than Jewish people. There are some Christian extremists who believe that Israel needs to annihilate all of their neighboring countries to bring about the rapture. There are people out there, there are Christians, there's a large number of Christians in America who will just believe what Trump tells them to believe, and Trump doesn't like Muslims, and so ergo he believes that they believe what he says, you know. So yeah, there's not a big, there's not like a logical through line, but if you recognize the culture that a lot of these Christians live in, and a lot of like the sort of like mega church Protestant work ethic, if you're rich, it means that God likes you, as opposed to it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. It's just a weird community of people who are less than Christ-like, shall we say, or they don't really mirror Christ's belief. All right, John Abbott, great to see you again. And John Abbott, I don't know if you remember our chat from yesterday about how the DNC picks their primary schedule to favor centrists, but I actually was thinking about it after I logged off, and I have some other things to add to that conversation if you're down. All right, Dave 3, the legend, just said Trump 2028, so that's not a question, so you're getting blocked. I don't care if you have different political beliefs than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. Domingo Gonzalez Delgado says, I have no class today, so I get to hang out here finally. Well, welcome, Domingo. Great to see you. Carter Way says, Talrico for president, question mark? If he wants to run, he can run. He is on my list of people that I would support in the primary, depending on who else is running. Akshay says, thoughts on that warehouse arson. So I do not condone any kind of violence, be it against people or physical property. I do believe that when you create a system that stomps on the working class as drastically and effectively as this billionaire class that we are living with right now has been for a long time, then you are going to start seeing things like that warehouse fire and Luigi Mangione and stuff like that. And while, again, I am not, condoning that or supporting it or telling people that they should go do that, I think the billionaire class needs to look at shit like that and being like, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like, things are just getting started. So, yeah. Again, I do not advocate for that whatsoever. Do not do property destruction. Do not do political violence or anything like that. But if you're a billionaire, like, what does it tell you about the people that whose lives you are actively making worse, that they are resorting to tactics like this? Robbie Wood says, do you think we will ditch capitalism? Probably not. We'll probably just regulate it, or we'll add a little more socialism, a little more communism. PD Zakat says, immigration stance. Immigrants are a net positive. We need to have a pathway to citizenship. If there are people who are being bad here in America, breaking laws and shit like that, then yeah, deport them. But I do not believe that overstaying your welcome, or not filing your paperwork on time, or not having enough money to hire a lawyer to quote unquote come the right way does not mean that you should get sent to a torture prison in El Salvador. Muzz King and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. Ave Christus Rex says, what would your first order be if you were president? That's a really hard question. I don't know what the first most important thing would be. I mean, it seems really easy to say tax the rich, or there's probably statehood for DC, adding seats to the Supreme Court. There's just a lot of things on the to-do list. Mikael says, is there any Democrat you disagree with or dislike? Oh yeah, tons. I disagree with Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and who's that senator? Kristen. Who's a senator from New York who was saying mean shit about Mamdani, Kristen something, or Kirsten, I forget what her name is. Yeah, I disagree with tons of Democrats, but even the Democrat that I disagree with, Gillibrand, thank you, G, I appreciate that. Even the Democrats that I disagree with strongest, I still believe that it is better to have that Democrat in that seat than any Republican politician. I think Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema were probably my least favorite Democrats of all time, but it was better for them to be in those seats than, any other Republican. I'm pretty sure we replaced Kyrsten Sinema with Ruben Gallego, if I'm remembering correctly, but I don't think that Joe Manchin seat in West Virginia has been filled by a Democrat. Jack Fisher says, I think if there's a third term option, Obama would destroy Trump. Yeah, I think that if Obama ran a campaign against Trump, then he 100% would destroy him. Kirsten says, what do you think about the California governor's race? I think that all of the Democrats need to get their shit together and figure out who's going to run, because we cannot have a jungle primary that ends in 2 Republicans. I am personally advocating for and supporting, I can't believe I just blanked her name, Katie. I have a real hard time with names today, apparently. Katie Porter, I love. I got it before you, Kirsten. And Carbide, I got it before you guys. But yeah, if she ends up being the one that drops out, then, I'll probably move over to Swalwell. Okay, Jay Hernandez says, concentration camp be investigated. It's interesting because there are a bunch of ways in which we are seeing some accountability in the judiciary, because there are still a lot of good judges and good juries out there. So I think it's possible that maybe that works its way through the judiciary to the point where we do get an investigation into some of these ICE detention centers. But if it's in the hands of the Supreme Court, or if it's in the hands of the Republican-controlled Congress, then no, there won't be any investigations. All right, so John Abbott. So you mentioned yesterday that you believe that the DNC helps centrist candidates by, starting in states like Iowa and not having ranked choice voting and things like that. So my argument against that would be that if you look at 2008, 2016, and 2020, you don't really see that dynamic playing out. Like Biden became the nominee not because he fucking crushed in the extremely white centrist states of Iowa and New Hampshire. He came out on top because he fucking crushed it in, I think, was it South Carolina or North Carolina or something like that. Same thing with Hillary Clinton and Bernie. Like they were neck and neck in the early states, and it wasn't until like we opened up more states in the primary that she was able to sort of like pull out ahead. Same thing with Barack Obama in 2008, just fucking dominates the primary process, even though he is the more progressive of the two candidates. So I agree with you that if you look at that structure, it does kind of look like the DNC is putting their finger on the scale for the centrists, but it hasn't really worked out that way, right? Let me know what you think about that. Okay, let me get back into these TikTok comments. Eliminated All Four says, I've heard something about the impeachment of Trump. Can you clear it up? Yeah, there's a bunch of sort of like right-wing talking heads and elected Democrats who are calling for impeachment because, of all the cuckoo bananas things he's ever done, it seems like this past week has been his cuckooiest and banana-iest. But I think it's very unlikely that anything happens because if we wanted to 25th Amendment him, that would have to come from within his cabinet, and Trump specifically staffed his cabinet with people who would not do that kind of thing. And the Republicans in Congress are asleep at the wheel. Like they have been letting Trump get away with everything that he's been doing, and why would they change their mind now? Mohammed says, why are American lives more important than any other lives? I do not believe that they are. And John Abbott says, but is that proof that they're not putting their finger on the scale, or is it proof that if they weren't putting their finger on the scale, the progressives would do much better? I don't know, John Abbott. I guess you could make an argument that the reason why that structure is there is to do that, but it hasn't been working. And in Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden winning their primaries, they didn't win because of those things. So if that is their tactic, it's not a very good tactic. So yeah, I mean, if they didn't do that, maybe progressives would do better, but I'm a little skeptical about that because Democratic voters tend to be way more strategic in who they vote for. So even people that like Barack Obama in 2008 aren't planning on voting for him in states like Georgia and North Carolina until he wins Iowa and proves that he can win over white voters. You got a lot of people who like Bernie Sanders better in 2016, but believe that he can't win against Trump, and so they vote for Hillary Clinton instead, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it might actually be that having Iowa and New Hampshire go first makes it easier for progressives to get elected because it proves that they can win in a general. But yeah, we're talking like in a hypothetical area here. I will say that it is kind of convincing. I just don't think that the data supports it at all. Okay, $Billion Biscuit says, do you see the Iran conflict escalated again despite the ceasefire? We're dealing with two completely different motivations for Trump that I don't know which one will win. You've got the part of Trump that doesn't know how to do anything except for a 1980s style escalation ladder that eventually leads to, the shit that he was talking about in his Truth Social post about like eliminating the Iranian civilization. Then you've also got the motivating factor of Trump not liking bad headlines and not liking when the stock market crashes and not wanting not and when he's losing something, he just wants to take his ball and go home. I don't know which of those motivations is going to be strongest for him. I don't think that he has the skill to get out of this politically without either escalating or just dipping entirely. He made this massive fucking mess. Everything is worse now. If he decides to end it, if he just decides to fucking chicken out and say, and we declare victory and then just like send all the troops home, then I'm going to be like, fucking hell yeah, man, do that, please, I beg you. But like, we also can't ignore the facts that he started a war, lost it, and then dipped. I would rather he dip earlier rather than later, but like, that's what happened. Okay, RS says, who are you voting in Britain? So I am not a resident of the UK, so I do not have the ability to vote there. If I did, I can tell you I would not vote for the Tories, and I would not vote for reform. Triska and Muzz King, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Aaron E. Oliva says, many people are calling for the 25th Amendment. Your reaction? I think it's really unlikely because not only would we, if you wanted to impeach Donald Trump, you would need a simple majority in the House and a 2/3 majority in the Senate. If you want to 25th Amendment him, you would need his handpicked staff to declare him unfit to lead. Then you would need 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate. It's like a higher bar to reach. So I think that it's unlikely, but the path forward, the path towards accountability for Trump, the path towards getting bad people out of government and putting good people in government is the exact same as it was before. You know, it's political pressure, it's striking, boycotting, protesting, it's organizing and recruiting, it's voting in the primary and the midterms and the general, and convincing people to vote for people who are not psychopaths or who will not allow psychopaths to do whatever the fuck they want. Muzz King and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. And now we are on to finger hearts, the best part of the day. Finger hearts o'clock. All right, Southern Blue Dot says, do you think he would do jail time? He 100% deserves to be in jail. There is ample evidence for putting him in jail. The only thing stopping him from being in jail is political power and the power and influence of his billions and billions of dollars. And so we, the people, are going to have to do a lot of work to make sure that we put people in government who can and will stand up to and fight against those things that give him cover. And that's going to take a lot of work for us because the billionaire class doesn't want us to elect those people. They want to elect the same, yes men and sycophants that are currently in control of the government. So we got to do that work. If we want to see accountability, we have to do that work. D. Scott, Triska, Southern Blue Dot, and Connie, thank you so much for helping me reach my first Finger Hearts goal of the day. V says, do you support Jill Stein, American politician, much better than Kamala Harris? I think. No, V, I do not support Jill Stein. Jill Stein is a con artist. Jill Stein does not do shit for the Green Party, and there is evidence to suggest that she is an agent of the Russian government. Okay, let's see here. BitNevo says, why do people easily dismiss 2024 election fraud when T and EM had everything to lose? Hope Corps. So BitNevo, there is some evidence to suggest that vote totals may have been changed in 2024, but it's not enough right now. Like, we don't have anything conclusive enough to say that there was definitely vote changes that happened. There are statistical anomalies that suggest that that's the case, but there are also there's also statistical data to suggest that this makes perfect sense. So yeah, I mean, I know that we all want that in our hearts to be able to prove that the election was stolen. So, but on the same, on the other side of the argument, like, even if we were able to prove that, like, it doesn't really change all that much. Like, we can't really take that evidence to the DOJ or the Republican Congress and say, look, Trump didn't really win, get him out of there, because the same Republicans that have been letting him start illegal wars and do war crimes and detain people illegally and send people to torture prisons in El Salvador and have a Bitcoin and sell political pardons, like, they're going to be the same people that are currently in charge of Congress. Okay, D says, some prediction markets are saying it's possible both the House and Senate may go Dem, all the more reason to continue the work. 100% from your lips to God's ears, D. But here's the thing. I am not going to be happy if Democrats only win the House and the Senate. If a single Republican wins their election in 2026, I will feel as though we did not do enough work, because just based on what the Republican Party has allowed Trump and his administration to get away with, every single fucking one of them should lose their jobs. Like, there is no excuse. There is zero excuse for voting Republican going forward. Okay, John Abbott says, with the 25th, if he submits a sworn affidavit saying he's mentally fit to continue holding office, that just creates even more hoops. That sounds accurate. JP says, the day before we attacked Iran, they had agreed to all nuclear restrictions and international monitoring. Why would they give in now? 100%, JP. We have proven to be an unreliable negotiating partner. Stephen Peterson says, do you think Gavin Newsom would make a good president? Side note, he's quite handsome. LOL. Yeah, we've noticed. We've noticed that Gavin Newsom is handsome. I think he'd be a perfectly okay president. He is nowhere near the top of my list for people that I would support in the primary election, but tall, handsome, he's done good things, he's done bad things. Yeah, we could definitely do worse. We could definitely do worse on the Democratic side, and we could definitely do worse with any single Republican that could run. Okay, Adrian Shortgo says, I want to ask basics. What is the difference between the states and country? What's a political nation? I'm not really sure what you mean by political nation. And as far as like the difference between the state and the country, like sometimes when people refer to like countries as states, like the state of Israel, the state of Germany, etc., when you're talking about it in the context of America, America is the country and that is broken up into 50 different states and a bunch of different territories. Alex says, what's your view on defunding the police? It's an interesting question, Alex. The narrative around defunding the police is like a fucking quagmire because people are like, oh, so you want the people that are protecting us to not be able to feed their families and shit like that, or you think that the police are bad? Well, who are you going to call when somebody breaks in your house, et cetera, et cetera? And I'm not mad at the phrase defund the police. Like, it came out of a protest movement. It's not like they were focus grouping it. So the people who believe that is losing Democrats elections, I'm like, come on, like that didn't come out of Chuck Schumer. That came out of angry protesters who were watching the police murder people and were fucking sick of it. So what do I actually believe? Like, what's the good policy? I think the good policy is that we create different divisions within the police so that the police aren't wasting their time getting cats out of trees and addressing people who are having mental health crises. I do think that the police need serious reform, like from the bottom up. Like the shit is still happening, And how do we stop that? It's not retraining. Like we need people to be investigating the police. Like there is a significant amount of data to suggest that a lot of law enforcement is heavily involved with white supremacist groups and things like the KKK. And we need to root those people out. Like those people should not be walking around with a fucking gun and any kind of legal immunity. There are major reforms that have to happen in law enforcement, I believe. Okay, everybody loves ramen says, should we establish a maximum age based on the ratio between highest and lowest paid employee? Wage, not age. And yeah, 100%. Like right now, what is it, like 350x? Like the CEOs are making 350x what the lowest paid employees are making. Why don't we, I got a crazy idea. Why don't we change that to 100x and then like see if things get better? Because I suspect that it will. Okay, JP says, if every Republican lost their next election, maybe all politicians would start worrying about consequences. I would fucking love that. Okay, JC says, people need to stop resisting arrest. JC, I gotta tell you, I find that to be a very unconvincing argument. Like, I don't think that if you resist arrest, then cops should be able to murder you, JC. I also think that people are completely justified in being scared of the police and being scared that if they get apprehended by law enforcement, that they are not going to be given their due process rights and potentially they will be tortured or SA'd or even murdered. So yeah, I do not believe that it is the responsibility of an untrained public to not get murdered by the police. I think it is the job of the police to be trained in de-escalation tactics and not actually murder people. D. Scott, Kim Buckman, Muzz King, and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my second finger hearts goal of the day. All right, one rib less than Eve says, people need to stop paying the government taxes when our taxes are used for oligarch war. That's a dangerous form of protest. Like, you could go to jail for that. So I can't advocate for that. I can't tell people to like go give up your freedom, in that way. If that's how hardcore you are, then fucking God bless you. But that I can't tell people what they should do with their lives in that regards. Johnny Jewell says, yep, police need training, LOL. How are we going to have a police force that thinks us versus them? I didn't say new training, Johnny. I'm not sure if that's what you were insinuating. Max says, ICE has saved way more lives than they've taken, 1,000%. First of all, I think that's false, Max. Second of all, I think you're probably I think it's a guess. I don't think that you're like looking at data to suggest that, but 100%, 1,000%, ICE has not saved more lives than they've taken. That is a bananas thing to say. Max says they took 10,000 pounds of fentanyl off the streets last year. First of all, I don't know if that's true. Second of all, I don't believe that. I just don't buy it, Max. I don't buy it at all. And also, you're in question, jail, Max. Ask a question or you're going to get booted. I do not care for people just spreading right-wing propaganda on my channel. Max, congratulations. That last comment of yours is the last one that is not a question. Otherwise, you're booted. Stephen Williams says, the police are not murdering anyone, you shill. What is your problem? Stephen Williams, that is inaccurate. We have video footage of the police murdering people. We have video footage of ICE murdering people. We have credible reporting that ICE is murdering people in detention facilities and sexually assaulting them. I guess, Stephen Williams, my question is, how come you haven't heard about this stuff happening? Tanya Reyes says, will or does Israel want to be the future superpower? I think so. I think they're far off from being that. They're definitely not close to being first on the list. If they are trying to be a superpower, they're probably trying to be a sneaky superpower where it's like we pull the strings behind all the real superpowers while we are just sort of like protected in our little area over here. Ryan Doc says, are you a far leftist? I don't really consider myself a far leftist. I consider myself a leftist. I consider myself a progressive Democrat. Max says, so do you think we should get rid of ICE? Yes, 100%. The rot in that agency it goes deep. It goes real deep. And it's been deep for a long time. Like Obama tried to regulate ICE, and they basically told them to go kick rocks, and they just kept on doing what they were doing. And CBP was able to do the job of ICE before 9/11, before they were established, so they can just go back to doing that. Max says, I mean, out of the hundreds of thousands of encounters, you think it's that bad? Oh, yeah, 100%, Max. Like 90% of the people that ICE are detaining, they are detaining illegally. They are detaining people who are legal residents, who are citizens, who have done zero crimes, who have no criminal record whatsoever. They are sending people to torture prisons in third nations that they've never been to. There's credible reporting of them using excessive force and detaining people for long past when it is legally appropriate. They just did a stakeout at an army base to get a wife of somebody in the service who was trying to become a legal resident. Like, what are we doing here? Francois says, do you believe in fully open borders? Maybe one day, but definitely not anytime soon. Okay, Francois, I did that one. Ryan Doc says, I think ICE should be remade. When Trump leaves, it will be fine. I think the worst case scenario is leaving it the way that it is. So if I can't get abolish ICE, I will take reform ICE. Max says, what citizens were arrested by ICE? Max, if you shoot me a DM, I will send you all the information on that, but I don't have it memorized. Ryan Doc says, are you okay with letting illegals across the border illegally? No, we obviously should have people making sure that people don't come here illegally. I think it's important to recognize that people that sneak across the border are not the majority of people that are here illegally. So, we're kind of trying really hard to solve this one small crack in the wall while there's a giant hole over here that's just pouring people in. But I also think that we need to be cooler about people trying to become Americans. And if somebody has overstayed their welcome, if somebody is here undocumented, but they are trying to become an American citizen and they are not breaking any laws and they are doing great work and being upstanding members of their community, then I think that we need to meet them halfway and try our best to help them become American citizens. But it is a very difficult, long, complicated, and expensive process to do that. So we need to fix our pathway to citizenship. I also, and I've been saying this on my lives lately, where I'm just like, why are we always so dogmatic about the law when it's poor people and brown people, but when it's rich white people, we get a little bit more loosey-goosey with it? Like, why isn't Trump in jail right now? Why are we like, oh, this is rich person did a crime, we should really figure out like what are the extenuating circumstances and stuff. But for poor people and brown people, we're like, you did a crime, you go to jail for the rest of your life. End of story. Amanu says, anyone retiring from the Supreme Court anytime soon? There is, Alito has been doing things that suggest he is going to retire before the midterms. It's possible that Clarence Thomas will as well. I don't think that they are confident enough in Republicans maintaining Senate majority that they would stay in their seats when they could just like cash out while Trump can still nominate their replacements. Albin Curti says, do you believe the Democratic Party is left-wing? Not all of the Democratic Party, but if you're looking for the left wing in America, they are in the Democratic Party, like your AOC's is, and your Mamdani's is, and your Talarico's is. Like, they are all left-wing. V says, I feel like you sound like a progressive, kind person, so it confuses me why not like Jill Stein. Jill Stein does not do any work for progressive policies. She only does these ego-driven, cash grab, spoiler candidate runs for presidency every 4 years. And again, V, there is evidence to suggest that she is working for Russia, V. So I find it sus that you don't see that. You know, potentially you are in Russia also, V. All right, Ryan Doc says, what state are you from? I grew up in California, but I have lived in Ohio and Pennsylvania and New York. Albin Curti says, do you view Biden or Kamala as left-wing? I'm not referring to Sanders or Mamdani. So, you know, I find this thing that people do sometimes, Albin, where they will assume that the Democratic Party is all centrist or all progressive, and then when somebody will bring up the people who don't fit into that mold, they will go, well, those people don't count. So you're saying, like, Sanders doesn't count, Mamdani doesn't count. But yeah, Biden and Kamala are interesting cases, like to try to parse out how centrist or how progressive they are. Biden obviously ran in 2020 as the centrist candidate, but his administration was the most progressive since FDR. And you can make an argument that he wasn't actually, you know, steering the ship because of how old he was. But, you know, I don't really give a shit if it was him or the people that appointed that did all the great things that I love, you know. Rem, V, D. Scott, Triska, and Kim Buckman, thank you so much for helping me reach my last Finger Hearts goal today. And now we're moving on to High Bears. That means that we are in monologue territory. If we do 3 High Bears, then I do the Karis Nemec monologue from the first season of Andor, everybody. Okay, so is Biden a progressive or is he a centrist? I have no idea. Kamala Harris is another interesting case where when she was running in the primary in 2020, she was trying to sort of like associate with the far left wing of that debate stage. Like she was trying to win on the same level as like an Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. But then obviously she kind of like tacked to the center when she became the nominee in 2024. And, you know, people will look at her record as an attorney general or as an AG or a DA and say, look at all the things that she did that were not progressive while she was there. In that situation, I like to be like, all right, well, maybe let's take a look at the fact that she was a woman and a person of color. And at the time, she was derided as being too progressive of a DA and an AG. So, you know, typically I think that Democratic candidates are probably more progressive than they make out that they are in reality, because they kind of have to make everybody happy. Like that's how you win as a Democrat. You have to appeal to both the left and the center. But yeah, I neither one of those are like my top 10, you know, potential presidential candidates, you know, not even close. Rem V, Kim Buckman, Muzz King, and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my first High Bear goal of the day. Scott says, did you cover why Melania came out with it wasn't me presser? We haven't talked about that yet. I do think it's super fucking weird that she did that. My guess is that some story is probably going to come out soon. And some information already has come out about like her being Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, or that she was having sex with Jeffrey Epstein before she started hanging out with Trump. I think she's probably just trying to get ahead of that story. Potentially, you know, things are going so bad in Iran that Trump wants to focus back on the Epstein files. That's not a possibility, but you know, you never really can tell with these ding dongs. Ecuadorian, great to see you again. How can someone be a far left wing if they aren't on an airplane? Very cute. JP says, too few immigration judges means delays, which makes people late. Why don't we hire more judges? That is the Democratic platform, JP, right there. And the Trump administration not only are they making immigration virtually impossible for anybody who isn't rich or white, they're also firing immigration and asylum judges to create more of a backlog. Metallica says JD Vance 2028. That is an example of the kind of comment that gets you blocked because it's not a question. I do not allow people just to spam the comments with right-wing promos. But if you have different political opinions than me, then ask a question and we can fuck around, Okay, let's see here. Ethan Rye says, what would you do about the current situation with the Strait? So Trump has put us in a really bad negotiating position with Iran. And so to that end, we would need to establish some new type of Iran nuclear deal. And we're going to have to give up more than we had in the JCPOA because Iran is holding all the cards right now. Like maybe there's like a savvy way to try to get some leverage over them. I don't think that Trump or anybody on his team is skillful enough to actually make that happen. Like the only thing that they are doing is threatening more military action and more war crimes and sending more troops and battleships over there. So yeah, knowing what I know, which admittedly I'm not like a foreign policy expert, knowing what I know, I would just say like, what are the things that we can get from the JCPOA while also giving Iran a little bit more that they want because, they kind of got effed by Trump, both in his first term and his second term, and we need to eat a little crow to make up for that. Okay, Albin says, do you bring people up on the live? Sometimes, it happens randomly. If that's something you're really interested in, Albin, then stick around. Continue to ask good faith questions, and we'll see how things go. Tanya Reyes says, do you think oil prices will soon affect us badly, and how should we prepare for it? I have no idea how we should prepare for it. I do not believe that we have started feeling the lion's share of the oil shock that is going to happen from Iran and this war and the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. So I think we're only seeing the beginning of prices going up. And it's not just going to be the price of gas, because the way that we get the gas here is gas, and the way that we get food to the grocery store is gas, and the way that we get our mail delivered is gas. So yeah, I think, the way that we get fertilizer is gas also. And so to make the fertilizer, we need gas. To get the fertilizer to the farmers, we need gas. The farmers are already struggling because of Trump's tariff war and mass deportations. There's no workers anymore. I think we're probably going to start seeing some food shortages. I'm not trying to cause any like panic buying or anything like that, but like I would be surprised if we do not see food shortages and massive price inflation at grocery stores, because all of this stuff is connected. And the boats that make their way from oil producing countries to here, they take a long time. And so we are still receiving shipments that were sent before the Strait of Hormuz closed. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Okay, Scott says supply chain is under attack. That is generally accurate. Albin Curti says, how would you define left wing? I guess anything to the left of like Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema is left wing. Not a Republican is left wing, I would say. Alex says, do you think Trump would most likely withdraw from Iran? I think that if he could convince people that he trusts, like the anchors on Fox News, that leaving Iran is a massive victory, then he would do it today. But I think that the people on Fox News that he watches really want this war to keep going. And so, I don't know. For me, it's completely 50-50. Like, you can't really tell with this dude. KP says, thoughts on socialism? I think it depends on how you define it, KP. If you define it as, government programs like universal health care or free public college or public schools or paved roads or fire departments, then I'm for it. Rem V says, did you hear that Canada is now looking at other markets instead of the USA to export their oil? That makes perfect sense to me. Like, we have shat on all our allies, so obviously you're going to go somewhere else. Ecuadorian says, how are immigrants like me supposed to go back home if ICE is in our airports? I don't understand what logic is that. Don't they realize they are making it physically impossible? Yeah, of all the things that you can say about Trump's immigration policy, it's a clusterfuck, and it is not productive towards their own goals. Everything that Trump does is bad for everybody, including the goals that they are purportedly interested in achieving. Okay, V says thoughts on Trump forcing Jamaica to stop supporting Cuba. I think that this maximalist position against Cuba it's irresponsible. It's not humanitarian, and it's not gonna work. Like, all you're doing is you're making the citizens of Cuba angrier at America than they are at their own government. So it's just going to further entrench, the communist regime in Cuba. Alex says, what's your view on the Cuban government? So if you talk to people in Florida who escaped from Cuba, they will tell you that there is nothing worse than the government of Cuba. Obviously, there are things in a communist government that work out better for the citizens than what we have here in America, like free healthcare, for example, for public healthcare, I should say. But I don't believe that people flee Cuba because it is a paradise. And I'm sure that you can point to like good things that have come out of a more socialist communist government, but again, human rights violations, atrocities, etc. KP says, is Trump homophobic? I think there's probably substantive evidence to suggest that he is. J.S. Payton says, are you in favor of requiring the naturalization test in order to run for president / positions in government? Oh, it's an interesting policy idea, J.S. Payton. Yeah, I'm not mad at that idea. I'm not going to die on that hill. I'm definitely open to it. I would be interested in hearing arguments against it before I kind of like staked my reputation on it. KP says, is abortion bad? I think it depends. I don't think that abortion is necessarily good or bad. I think that how you use it is good or bad. Like, if you were using it so that a woman does not have to give birth to her rapist's baby, then it's great. If you are using it so that a woman doesn't have to give birth to, a baby that is the result of forced incest, then yeah, that's great. If you're using it to save a woman's life, if a woman can't afford to have a child and was not given the kind of education that would teach her how to have safe sex, then I think it's a good thing there. V says, please listen to the actual people in Cuba. My family's Jamaica and new real Cubans. I don't know what side of the argument you're trying to argue there, V. But yeah, I think I was pretty clear about my position there. Okay, Dr. Nick Lombardo says, what's your stance on Israel's close ties with the U.S. government? I think it is long since time that we need to reevaluate our relationship. We already have a law that says that we are not allowed to send them any more money and weapons. So besides the fact that it's immoral, besides the fact that it doesn't work with our current relationship, besides the fact that, I already said that one, but we already have a law that says we're not allowed to send money and weapons to countries that are guilty of doing war crimes and G-side. And so just if we're only going to follow our own laws, we need to stop doing that. I believe that we need to regulate away right-wing billionaire-funded organizations like AIPAC, but not just AIPAC. Like, we also got to get rid of Heritage, and we also got rid of the Federalists, all that shit. Mikkel Meme says, do you like Zohran Mamdani? Yes, very much. JP says, I heard the Pope say, hey, I'm Pope. That's pretty funny. John Abbott says, thoughts on the Pentagon not only threatening the Pope, but threatening the first Pope from the U.S. I mean, it's the same shit with this Trump administration. Like, anybody that speaks against them is the worst, and you can say anything that you want about them, regardless of if they're the fucking Pope. It's all the same, like, perceived enemies grievance politics. Like, goddamn, like, can we just have people? Oh, Mikhail from TikTok. Oh, wow. Well, good to see you over on Twitch, Mikhail. Yeah, can we just have, like, if somebody that I think is doing good work says something mean about me, I'm not going to then go, all right, well, that person's dumb and that person sucks. That's not going to be my take on things. It's so transparent, it's such like obvious favoritism. Trump would say that Alex Jones was a great American until Alex Jones spoke up against him. And now all of a sudden Trump is like what Alex Hook did to the Sandy Hook families is unconscionable. He would never use a word like that. That is that many syllables. But still, it's so obvious favoritism. Rem V, D Scott, Muzzking, Connie, Scott, and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my second high bear goal of the day. Wow, we are closer to getting this Karis Nemec monologue than we have been in a long time. I haven't even done it in a long time. I certainly hope I remember all of it. But yeah, there's an unpublished reward for helping me reach more of these gift goals, which is if we get to 3 high bear goals, then I do the Karis Nemec monologue from the first season of Andor, and that can either be something that motivates you guys or something that makes you not want to give me gifts if you don't want me to do that. But I put it out there as a potentially fun incentive. Teddy Shankman says, other than Trump, who's the worst president in modern history? I really don't know. I'm not a historian, but I think that the Republican presidents generally get progressively better as you go backwards in history. Like Trump was worse than George W. Bush, but George W. Bush was worse than Reagan, who was worse than Nixon, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm not really a historian, so I'm not gonna stake my reputation on that. Yo Mama says, do you think insulin should be free? Yeah, all healthcare should be. V says, I mean, the actual people in Cuba are pro-socialism. The Floridians were mostly the slave owners. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know anything about that. Again, there are a lot of things about foreign policy that I kind of shoot from the hip on. So yeah, again, I'm not gonna stake my reputation on any of that stuff. I'm just saying what it appears to be from my perspective. Rem V, D Scott, Muzzking, Kim Buckman, and Triska and Connie have helped me reach my third and final high bear goal of the day. So now we're moving over to donuts because obviously once you do high bears, you want some donuts. And now we're gonna do a little Andor, guys. There will be times when the struggle seems impossible. I know this already. Alone, unsure, dwarfed by the scale of the enemy. Remember this. Freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere. And even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. And then remember this. The imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Authority is brittle. It breaks. It leaks. Tyranny requires constant effort. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that. And know this. The day will come when all of these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance, will have flooded the banks of the Empire's authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this. Try. Alrighty, Alex's thoughts on Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is a liar and a con artist. Mikael says, we have elections this year, 13th September in Sweden. Oh! JP says, oh no, speech. What the hell does that mean? Okay, let's see here. Albin Curdy says, do you believe that you can be right-wing and progressive? I don't think so. I think that's just based on the definitions of those words. You can't really be those things, right? Thank you for the applause, everybody. Thank you for the applause. I did mess up the order of a couple of things. I haven't done that monologue in a while. Teddy Shankman says, do you believe in the abolishment of ICE? Yes, 100%. Piper Edit says, when Trump celebrated someone who investigated him. I don't know what that. Oh, what do you think of people being upset that some Democrats were happy Kirk's death, but said nothing when Trump celebrated someone investigating him who died? So I'm not 100% sure what you're asking here, Piper. It's a little muddled, but I think I do. So are there random ass people on the internet who were celebrating when Charlie Kirk died? Yes, 100%. But but the internet is the Wild West. Like, it can be just a bunch of fake people. Like, who knows? I think what's more important is seeing who are the people with platform, who are sort of like the established, responsible, powerful people within both political wings and their language. And if you look at that, if you look at the reporters and the content creators and the political activists, and if you look at the elected Democrats, all of them condemned Charlie Kirk's murder in the strongest possible language. But we don't see that from the same people of note, the same people who are at the top of the ladder on the right. You see them calling for more violence. You see them celebrating when Democrats get murdered or attacked. They make jokes about Nancy Pelosi's husband getting attacked by a psychopath with a hammer. They encourage the reporters to beat the shit. They encourage the supporters to beat the shit out of supporters, out of reporters. They encourage their supporters to beat the shit out of reporters. They encourage cops to beat the shit out of suspects. And they celebrate when people like Robert Mueller dies. So I think that's what you're asking about. So let's see here. V says, do you support the idea of first-generation Americans being viewed as fully American? Yeah, I mean, once you're a citizen, then you're American, right? Alvin says, may I join and speak about left wing? Yeah, maybe. Let me catch up with some of these comments. Let's see here. Okay. Tammy Take Talk says, do you feel our US dollar is being sabotaged? Yeah, either intentionally or not intelligently. Either intentionally or not intentionally or not intelligently, it is being sabotaged by Trump. Alex, celebrating unalivings is evil regardless of enemy or not. Completely agree with that. JP says, they encourage supporters to beat up reporters, just as good as selling seashells. That's funny. D says, I've heard discussions about minimum required certification to run for office, remove the popularity contest modeling for elections. Your thoughts? I think it's a delicate balance between making positions of political power something that only the elite can get, and making positions of political power something that really bad people have a harder time getting. Like, how we strike that balance is the devil's in the details there. But I do think that I would be for some kind of reform to keep obvious con artists and psychopaths like Donald Trump from getting political power. Alex says, do you agree with Candace Owens is a crazy conspiracy theorist? Oh, yeah, 100%. I think that's kind of, that's an easy argument to make. If you're devoting dozens or hundreds of hours to trying to prove that the president of France's wife is a man, I think it's pretty clear that you're a conspiracy theorist. Bruce says, thoughts on the death of T3. I don't know what T3 is. V says, can you answer my question about Melania's speech? Let me see if I can find it. V, where is your question about Melania's speech? How do you feel about Melania's speech? It was pretty weird. It's pretty weird for the first lady to go out there and declare that she didn't know who Jeffrey Epstein was or anything, especially considering that her husband was such good friends with him and spent so much time with him, and there's so much video evidence and photographic evidence of the two of them together. It appears as though she's just trying to get ahead of a story that's the evidence to suggest that she had like a sexual relationship with Epstein before she started seeing Trump. Potentially, things are going so bad in Iran that Trump wants Epstein back in the news to distract from that. But yeah, who the hell knows about these ding-dongs. KP says, thoughts on illegal immigration? I'm not dogmatic about illegal immigration. If somebody is here legally or not, and they do crimes, then yeah, deport them. Obviously, if they're a citizen, you can't deport them. But I mean, like legal residents and things like that. Green card holders, I believe, if they do a murder, you can probably deport them. I don't know what the law is, but I'm pretty sure that that's it. But yeah, if somebody is here illegally, but they are an upstanding member of their community, and they are working and paying taxes and not committing crimes and trying to become a citizen the right way, but are being stalled by how complicated and difficult and expensive of a process that is, then I think that we need to meet them halfway. And I think that we need to make a more a smoother pathway to citizenship. Okay. Let's see here. Yankee Balak Bayan says, make them serve their time, then deport them. Not mad at that. V says, they have deported many green card holders and people on workers' visas. I know that the Trump administration has, but I don't know if that was legal for them to do. So maybe there's a legal maybe there's a right way to do that. I don't know. But the Trump administration is not doing that. They're not obeying the law in doing that. Connie Sindel says, your thoughts on the Artemis space trip? I'm for it. I like exploring space. I like investing in science. Teddy Shankman says, do you believe housing is a human right and should be in some aspect provided by the government? Yes, 100% do. If you need it to live, then the government should protect your ability to get it. KP says, how is it going in the war for Trump? Poorly, I would say. He is becoming drastically less popular with every day that this war continues. With every day that people are going to the gas pumps and paying more, with every American service member who is being hurt or killed, he is becoming less popular. Ninjas in Paris says, is it truly wrong to consider yourself... Ooh. Oh, sorry, I just have a little medical issue over here. I got someone's mom stuck in my throat. All right. Is it truly wrong to consider yourself apolitical for nihilistic reasons? I don't know if it is healthy, both on an individual level. Sounds like I'm crying because of that comment. I don't know if it's healthy. I don't know if it's healthy, both on an individual or on a community level, for somebody to be nihilistic. Ninjas in Paris. And so I would love to convince you to not be nihilistic, because whether you're nihilistic or not, you could be apolitical, but politics isn't a you, like you can ignore politics, but politics doesn't ignore you. Like you will suffer the consequences or reap the benefits of whoever is in charge of the government, regardless of if you're paying attention to politics or not. So I would encourage you to not be nihilistic. I would encourage you to pay attention to politics. If you want to chat about it, I'm down with that. Let me know what your issues are, and hopefully I can convince you to come back to the light side of the force. Andrew says Israel controls both sides. That is inaccurate, Andrew. If you are looking for the politicians who stand up to Israel and don't take AIPAC money, they are almost exclusively in the Democratic Party. They have one in the Republican Party, Thomas Massie, but the majority, the lion's share, 99% of the politicians who eschew Netanyahu and eschew AIPAC are all in the Democratic Party. All right, Alex says, what's your view on people that intentionally live off government because they don't want to work? I have a bit of a controversial take on that, Alex, which is I think that people should be able to have a very nice life and not have a job, especially considering that they were staring down the barrel of potentially there being 90% fewer jobs because of AI and mechanization. But yeah, I have felt this way for a long time. I'm like, you should be incentivized to have a better life. You should be incentivized to get a job to have a better life, not to be able to just live and not starve to death. Like, that seems to me barbaric. Dan Blackbird says, I thought about discouraging nihilism, but why bother? There's no point. Dan Blackbird, you never miss. Parvis says, I think people should have the right to support MAGA. I mean, yeah, they should have the right to. I don't think it's a good thing to do. And I think that a lot of people are not good people who are in the MAGA movement and are in the MAGA movement for reasons that I think are bad. Yeah, you should have the right to support whatever political party you like. That's what the First Amendment is about in this country. Alex says, I get you, but I'm saying people that don't want to work just because they are lazy, even having good... Finish your comment, Alex. I'm down for hearing the rest of it, Alex. If you can finish the comment, I will read the rest of it. If you just finish it, I will read it. Ooh, I love this from John Abbott. John Abbott says, weaponize your nihilism. Nothing matters, so why not make life better for people? I fucking love that, John Abbott. Nothing matters, so why not make life better for people? God damn. That just lit my soul aflame. Alex I get you, but I'm saying people that don't want to work just because they are lazy, even having a good job. Um, yeah, I gotta be honest, Alex. Like, I know that there has been decades of propaganda convincing people that poor people are only poor because they are lazy, or that lazy people on Social Security are evil and they're stealing your taxpayer dollars, et cetera, et cetera. I don't buy it. You know, I think that life is hard. And I think that if somebody doesn't want to have a job, that is the most reasonable thing to exist because jobs fucking suck. You know, it makes perfect sense to me. And if you want me to get mad at somebody who is sucking on the teat of government funds, then I am going to get mad at the rich people who are sucking at the teat of government funds. Not only because they're rich, so they're doing great anyway, so they don't need my tax dollars, but also because they are spending way more of my taxpayer dollars than every single poor lazy person on the planet. So yeah, I don't care. I think we are wasting way more money policing welfare and other social programs than we are saving by catching people who are quote unquote lazy or who are exploiting the system. Like, I just don't care. I don't care. Living is hard, life is hard, and especially being poor is hard. You know, like I came from a very privileged background. I grew up in a wonderful neighborhood in a family that had a little bit of money. And then my family lost it all. And I got to experience what it was like to know that I wasn't going to be able to put food in my mouth unless I found a job yesterday. You know, I was in a position where I was like, rent is due tomorrow, and I just got fired. Fuck. You know, I know what that world is like, and you know, it's inhuman that we are forcing people to live like that. It's barbaric. Mm-mm-mm. Teddy Shankman says, "View on Hassan Piker." I find Hassan Parker very frustrating because he's exactly one of those kinds of leftists that I think we probably agree on 99% of things, but every once in a while he'll say something where I'm like, "What the fuck, dude? Like, what the fuck?" You know, he went out there pretty recently and said that if Gavin Newsom was the nominee, then he wouldn't vote or he would vote third party. And I'm like, that is the most wildly irresponsible thing for somebody in your position to say. I think that people like Hassan are a net positive. Like, I think that we should have cool, good looking people getting the youths interested in politics, you know, but to use that platform to encourage people to not vote or to try to punish the Democrats by not voting or whatever, like we are living through the consequence of that right now. Like, the families of Alex Preddy and Renee Good are suffering in part because people believed the propaganda that said it was better to not vote than to vote. So yeah, I just do not know how you can justify saying shit like that, you know? And I have a lot of sympathy for other voters, but once you reach a certain level of fame and influence, you have to be more responsible. You know, and that goes for people like Hassan Piker, and that also goes for people like Joe Rogan and Andrew Schultz and Theo Vaughn. Like, you're supposed to be comedians. You're supposed to be the guys that see through the bullshit, and yet you went out there and told people with your whole fucking ass that they should vote for the most obvious fucking corrupt con man in the history of time. So yeah, you need to be better if you have that kind of platform. You need to be better. Alrighty, Midas says, you said not voting for Gavin is something you disagreed with. Anything else? You know, somebody just reminded me of something else that he said that was like in that territory, but I don't really remember what it was. I haven't dug that deep into the Hassan controversies. I am aware that they exist. I've heard people talking about them, and I know like a handful of things that he said that I was just like, what the fuck, man. V says, but Piker is left wing and he does not support Trump. Yeah, again, I think that he and I agree on 99% of policies and shit like that. But again, I do not think that you are allowed to be that irresponsible when you have that many millions of people who are listening to you. Alex says, thoughts on Dean Withers. For everybody who is a young person in like kind of the debate culture on the left, I think you're probably a net positive on the culture. My personal philosophy is that debates and debate culture is not productive for politics, and so that's why I don't do debates on my show. But again, I think that we need to have young, popular people out there making the point for left-wing politics, even if it is in a flawed form, like a debate form. Midas says, "Do you think we are truly free if we can only vote Democrat or Republican?" Yeah, we have the mechanisms, Midas, to change the political parties. Like if we voted for people in the primary who did not do the things that the current Democrats and Republicans are doing, then we would have completely different political parties. We don't need to start new political parties, we just have to vote for different people in the primary. Now, if you're making an argument for like opening up our political process to more political parties through things like ranked choice voting, then I'm down with that. Like, I'm with you. I agree. Like, let's do it. Let's do it yesterday. But the only way to do that is to support the Democratic Party, because the Republican Party is never going to allow anything that threatens their power, like ranked choice voting. They're going to do everything they can to stomp on other political parties. And this is not to say that there aren't Democrats who do that as well. Like Nancy Pelosi was famously fucking trying to shoot AOC in the leg as she was becoming, as she was gaining power. But the Democratic Party is not trying to make ranked choice voting legal. They are teetering on the edge of having ranked choice voting for their primary elections, whereas the Republican Party is actively trying to make ranked choice voting illegal. Like, I can tell you the name of the House resolution. I have it on my notes here. Midas says, thoughts on the 6? I love him. AOC plus 3 or whatever. The Progressive Caucus. Those are my peeps. Alex says, thoughts on Andrew Tate? Alleged sex trafficker, shitty right-wing manosphere content creator. Yeah, thumbs down on Andrew Tate. Reed Michael says, call the Democrats if we're elected president would go to the CFR, Council for Foreign Relations. I don't really know what the council, I don't know anything about the Council for Foreign Relations, Reed Michaels, to get their political instructions. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Sounds a little conspiracy theory-y to me, Reed Michaels. It's run by British intelligence. Yeah, I don't really buy that. SLT says, thoughts on clavicular? I think it's really sad that people like clavicular exist, that believe that they have to do all of that to make themselves this weird ideal of what it means to be beautiful. Like, I think that it makes me sad that people have to devote their lives to that, Midas says, can I ask, as someone that's getting into politics, why don't you like debates? Oh, excellent question. There are a bunch of things that I think are wrong with debates. I don't really have the list memorized, but let me just kind of like shoot from the hip and see what I can get through. Debates kind of create this spectator sports version of politics, which I do not believe is the best way to solve problems. Like, if we're just going to be arguing about how to solve problems as opposed to actually solving problems, like, doesn't really seem productive to me. People who win debates aren't the ones who have the most accurate information. They're the ones who are able to employ the most successful debate tactics, whether you're doing straw man arguments or cherry picking or false equivalences or whatever you can, or just straight up fucking lying. Like, some people win debates by just straight up fucking lying, and if the person they're debating doesn't have the exact fact memorized that they're able to put in a pithy way to refute that lie, then the liar wins. So yeah, I would much here's the thing. I want to convince people that going the way of progressive politics is the right move. But I cannot convince somebody of that if their paycheck depends on them not believing that. And all of these right-wing people, like Ben Shapiro and, Alex Jones, or, I remember all the debate boys on the right. I know Charlie Kirk was one, but obviously he's no longer with us. But all of these guys, like, they pay their rent and buy their fucking Ferraris based on not believing accurate information. So, yeah, like, what is the point? what is the point? The point is to convince the audience, and the audience doesn't always get convinced by accurate information. Okay, Midas says, oh my god, can you give me some things to look out for? Like as someone that's watching debates as a way to view my perceptions. Sure, so a straw man argument is where a person tells the audience what the other person's argument is in a way that is very bad faith. So for example, if I said that I think we need to reform the police department, a straw man argument would be like, oh, so you're like a defund the cops kind of guy. Like you just think that we shouldn't have cops. And you just think that crime is okay. Like you love criminals. Like, is that what you're saying? That's a straw man argument. Cherry picking would be like if I said there is way more political violence on the right than there is on the left. Cherry picking would be to say, oh yeah, because the right did Black Lives Matter, because the right did burning down Minnesota during Black Lives Matter protests, So you're picking one example as opposed to looking at the trends, looking at, we kind of like look at all of the political violence and then we parse out which side is doing more of it, There's false equivalencies where I would say like, Trump is a corrupt president because he has a cryptocurrency, which allows him to accept unlimited bribes from people in a way that is completely opaque. Like we'll never be able to find out all the people that are bribing Trump because he has a cryptocurrency. And then somebody else would go, well, what about Hunter Biden? And it's like, that is a false equivalency because Hunter Biden wasn't president. There's no evidence that Hunter Biden was involved with Biden in any kind of corruption. Hunter Biden didn't have a cryptocurrency. Hunter Biden wasn't doing the things that even Donald Trump's kids are doing, Yeah, those are just a couple of them like off the top of my head. And, obviously there's just like lying, if you look up all of these people in the debates, like go to PolitiFact, which is a website that is fairly independent and just parses out, is this thing that this person is saying accurate or not accurate or somewhere in the middle? And, I've looked up Ben Shapiro, I've looked up Tucker Carlson, I've looked up Charlie Kirk. And those guys they tell way more lies than they tell truths. I'm pretty confident that no matter which debate board you are talking about, if they're on the left, they will be more accurate than not. And if they're on the right, they will be more inaccurate than not. But again, I'm basing that off of the handful that I have dove into. All right, Teddy Shankman says, the idea that Kamala Harris lost because of someone like Hassan Piker is something I can't get behind. I would agree with that, Teddy, but I'm not saying that Hassan Piker lost Kamala Harris her election. I am saying that people not voting lost Kamala Harris their election, and some people didn't vote. Potentially, a critical mass of people didn't vote because they believed propaganda narratives saying that it is wrong for you to vote for the Democratic Party because of X, Y, or Z. Midas says, bro, what is your aim for likes? I shall give all I can. I appreciate that, Midas. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate any support that you guys want to give me, whether it is, the free kind, like shares and likes and telling your friends how great my live streams are and, yeah. Or, you can do the paid kind of support. Like you can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, if you're already paying for that, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. It costs you $0, but it helps me out a ton. And I also have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month, and it is your support that allows me to keep on doing these shows. So, if you want to just keep on tapping and give me lots of likes, like that's totally fine also. But if you want to do more, there is more that can be done. Gam says, I'm not voting for Democrats as they stand by capitalism. Well, if Democrats don't win, Gam, then Republicans win, and Republicans are standing by capitalism way harder and worse than Democrats are. So do you think that that's an okay thing to happen, Gam? Let me know about that. Parker Norville says, do you think geographic location or economic standing influences politics more? That's a really good question. I don't know which one is more, honestly, Parker Norville. Probably probably economic standing. Like, I think there were a lot of, poor Democrats in red states and rich Republicans in blue states. Will says, who would you vote for? Democrats have another ballot. Ugo says, I'm a Muslim, and the rhetoric Hassan was spewing 100% cost voter apathy. It's really disappointing. I think the data probably supports that. Mina says, okay, I will join Patreon. I have much more than here on TikTok. LOL. Yeah, Patreon is great, and there's a fun incentive if you become a higher paid member. At the $10 a month level, you get what I'm calling on TikTok gardening thoughts, and which I find very entertaining and I think are a steal at twice the price. Ryan says, why do people hate on capitalism? Excellent question. So why do people hate capitalism? Capitalism has, through its history, proven that what is most important is making money for a select group of people, regardless of how immoral or barbaric the mechanisms are. So, people talk about, like, look at how many people have died because of communism in China and Russia and socialism in Venezuela. And it's like, look at how many people have died because, CEOs and business owners wanted to save a little bit of money. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. Everybody that died of cancer because of all of the carcinogenic chemicals in our food and in our water. Like the families that were described in the movie Erin Brockovich, like they got cancer or died or became, disabled because of capitalism. And an argument could be made that, there are a lot of people in the Middle East who have died because of capitalism. Because capitalism said, spend a shit ton of money on bombs, drop them on brown people in the Middle East, and take the oil so I can be rich. Capitalism has given us exploitive occupations. Before we had unions, we had child labor, we had 80-hour work weeks, shit. We still have those things, but now you get like overtime payment and shit like that. Yeah, capitalism is you make as much money for the shareholders and the owners as you possibly can, regardless of how many people get hurt. The cigarette industry, the reason why cigarette companies got the data on their customers dying because of their product, and they were like, what the thing we should do is we shouldn't invest some of our ill-gotten gains in teaching people about the harms of cigarettes and helping them to quit our dangerous products and maybe go into an industry that isn't so dangerous for people and predatory. Instead, they were like, man, we really need to bury this information and lie about it and just advertise the shit around it, The fossil fuel company, how many people are going to die because the fossil fuel company thought it was better for them to become insanely, historically wealthy, and millions, billions of people are going to die because of climate change? How many people have already died because of lung cancer brought about by burning fossil fuels? That's why people hate capitalism. Alrighty, let's see here. Brian Smith says, yeah, but the companies were held accountable, unlike communism. So first of all, we've never seen a real communist country. Like, Russia's not really communist, China's not really communist, Venezuela's not really socialist. They just call themselves that. And so in a true communist or socialist society, like, there is accountability, but in a dictatorship, there isn't. And to the companies that were held accountable, like, I don't think they're held accountable. Facebook was just handed like a multi-million-dollar judgment for creating a product that was addictive to teenagers and children, and that caused them harm, both mental and physical harm. Do you think that Mark Zuckerberg gives a shit about paying $500 million? That's a rounding error for that guy. The Koch brothers, two of the most insanely wealthy human beings to have ever existed. They decided to use a pipe to transport their fossil fuels that everybody in the company was telling them, this pipe is too old, it's got too many holes in it. If we do this, it could potentially cause a disaster. And they were like, yeah, but we'll be able to save $5 million. And so they did. And then the pipe exploded, and a car full of teenagers died. What is an appropriate punishment for taking somebody's children away from them? Because I can fucking guarantee you that the Koch brothers did not pay that price. They paid something. I don't remember what it was, but not enough. Not enough for the pain that those families felt. All right, and Ryan says, sure, but it's optional to engage in capitalism. It's not optional to engage in capitalism. I can't feed myself. I can't get electricity. I cannot rent an apartment without engaging in capitalism. I'm sure I could move out into the woods, and grow everything that I eat myself. That is a Herculean task. Okay, let's see here. Ryan says, you can if you knew how. Sure, Ryan, sure. I gotta be honest, I find that to be a very unconvincing argument. To say that you could just go live in the woods instead. Yeah, that's... Why is it always the responsibility of the workers? Why is it never the responsibility of the billionaires? Why is it never the responsibility of the owners? Why is it that it's our responsibility to recycle and drive an electric car? Why is it not the responsibility of the fossil fuel companies who are reaping record profits every fucking day to fix this fucking mess? But no, they're just fucking, making billions and billions of dollars, and everybody else is gonna fucking die, and they don't give a shit because they're building fucking underground bunkers in Hawaii. Oh yeah. What's up, Adams Garden? Tamara Heath says, thoughts on the California governor primary? Worried there's too many Democratic candidates and votes will be spread. I am also worried about that, Tamara. I love Katie Porter, but, if she is not in the top 2, then I am not voting for her in the primary. They need to get their shit together. All those candidates need to get their shit together and figure out who is going to run, because we cannot have a jungle primary in California that results in 2 Republican candidates for the general election. Wait, Danny Beck says, tell that to the people having their lives and home value destroyed by AI data centers. Yeah, Ryan, yeah. You think that? Hold on a second, Ryan. I want to make something 100% clear here, because we don't just have the option to go live in the fucking woods and grow our own food. Because a data center will pop up right next fucking door to you and dump all their pollution and fucking poison into your river water. What are you going to do to stop that? You're just going to move to a different part of the woods? There is no part of this earth where you are safe from capitalism. SLT says, what about those videos of Katie Porter being horrible to her aides? I haven't seen videos of Katie Porter being horrible to her aides. I also am extremely skeptical about shit like that, because we tend to have zero grace and wiggle room for people on the left. I watched that video of her getting a little pissy with a reporter, and I was like, I don't care. Every Republican has done worse than this, and lots of Democrats as well. So it's like, yeah, I believe in giving grace to Democrats because nobody else does. Okay, thank you, Mike Green. I appreciate you. Ryan says, I've made a shit ton of money off the construction of data centers, so I'm biased on that. Oh, I thought you were being snarky, Ryan. I apologize for my tone there. But do you think that makes up for the people who had their whole fucking towns poisoned? Do you think that makes up for people having skyrocketing electric bills to help pay for some of those data centers, Ryan? That's what capitalism's doing, my guy. John Cato says, has it always been Democrats versus Republicans? No, there were other political parties closer to the sort of birth of America. But over time, they have whittled down to Democrats versus Republicans. Okay. V says, for California, I am supporting Ramsey Robinson. He is very good. V, no. You are the problem, V. The person... Oh, who would have thought that the person who is advocating for Jill Stein would be voting for another spoiler candidates in the California primary. Who would have thought, V? You're sus as hell, man. But SLT, if you have a video of Katie Porter being shitty to her aides that you believe makes her, that discredits her from being governor of California, send me a DM. Shoot it over to me. I will happily check that out and revise my opinion of her. Right, what's that, Average Joe? Good to see you again. Johnny Scarp says, where do you stand on abortion? I am pro-choice, but even if you're pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats because Democratic policies decrease abortions, Republican policies increase abortions, and they make pregnancy more dangerous for women. Okay, let's see here. V says, how is he bad? He is bad because he's not one of the top 3 candidates, and he hasn't dropped out of the race yet. So he is a spoiler candidate. Does that make sense, V? We need to whittle down the field of Democratic candidates because as it stands, if the primary were to happen today and everybody just voted how the polling was, then in the general election, there would be 2 Republicans, even though they are less popular. Okay. All kinds of clips says they should be 3 major parties because the current ones are bad. The only way to get that is with ranked choice voting, and the only way to get ranked choice voting is to support Democrats. SLT says, thoughts on a possible race between Newsom and Vance? Newsom's not my first choice for Democrat for the primary, but he's fine. So I would definitely vote for him over Vance. Vance is a fucking psychopath. Johnny Scarp says, so no time limit for abortion. Oh, yeah, no time limit for abortion. There already is a time limit, though. Even in the most progressive Democratic state, the time limit is the moment of viability. The moment that the baby can exist outside of the womb is the moment that you are no longer allowed to have an abortion. Of course, unless it is medically necessary. V says, but you need to grow your platform by campaigning and fighting, not just dropping out. It's too late, V. It is too late. The primary is in, 2 months, 3 months from now? It's too late. He's got to drop out. Everybody who isn't Katie Porter or Eric Swalwell or Tom Steyer needs to drop out. And if I'm being real, Tom Steyer needs to drop out also. Parker Norville says, which state becomes better, Texas turning blue or California turning red? Texas turning blue. David Douglas says, everyone wants jungle primaries, ranked choice until they don't work out for you. Well, no, if you had ranked choice, then you wouldn't have a problem with jungle primaries, David. Like, the reason why we need more Democrats to leave is because there are spoiler candidates because we don't have ranked choice voting. David Douglas. All right, everybody. So I went really long today because I was having so much fun here on the live stream. I really appreciate everybody who supported the show today, who sent gifts and likes and shares and tells their friends about how great my live streams are and everything like that. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you $0, helps me out a ton. Thank you, Dive and Find. I appreciate that. David Douglas says, sorry, thought they had ranked choice in California. My bad. Yeah, they don't, and it's a whole fucking clusterfuck. Gavin Newsom's office hung up on me because I asked them, why do we have ranked choice voting? This jungle primary thing wouldn't be an issue. And what I took that to mean is a pissy staffer, number one, and number two is we know. Okay, John Cato says, you have YouTube? I do. V says, I would like to question your beliefs on Ramsey Robinson at the time. You should rethink it. No, I'm not going to rethink it. We have 3 months until the primary. Ramsey's got to go. Everybody who's not named Katie Porter and Eric Swalwell has got to drop out of that race. End of story. There's nothing. There's no piece of data that you can show me that will convince me because the race is over. They're not blowing up. They are not blowing up. All right, where was I? If there were any questions that you have that I was not able to get to on this live stream, DMs are open. I want you guys to reach out to me. Use me as a resource to be more informed, more involved in politics. Use me and abuse me. Use me until I'm all used up. You can shoot me a DM. You can email me through my website. You can hit me up on my Discord channel. Link is in the bio for the Discord. And also the Discord is great because there's a community there and recommendations for books and podcasts. V, the polls are not fake. You know, polls are imperfect, but they are not fake. There's a difference between polling at 20% and polling at 3%. Let's see here. What else? And lastly, just everybody have a great weekend. Do the work. We only get out of this if we do the work. Be good to each other. You know, you don't have to be a dick to do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys on Monday. My regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. So see you guys on Monday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Goodbye.